I'm sure many of you have been keeping up on this story or with this story. Jimmy Kimmel was taken off air by ABC. Now, initial reports are saying this is due to the FCC basically putting pressure on him for the comments that he made and wrongfully identifying the, origin of the Charlie Kirk murderer. Now, I want to start by saying this. I'm not sure I believe that that's why they took him off air. And maybe there will be more evidence that supports that position, that ABC basically were strong-armed and had their hand kind of forced there. Again, I'm not sure that is true. You look at the ratings. You look at just where nighttime TV is right now. It has shifted largely from being this sort of comedic thing that pretty much everybody could watch regardless of where you were at on the political aisle. And it shifted to this more hive mind of leftism and masquerading sort of political activism as jokes. And it's not funny. That's the angle that a lot of people that have the complaints are taking right now. And that, well, he's a comedian, he's saying yada, yada, yada. But if you go look at what was stated in context by Jimmy Kimmel, there was no punchline, there was no joke really being said there, and I don't understand where it was. All that being said, I don't necessarily believe that that's why they're doing it. I think they use that maybe as an excuse. Couple of things I want to acknowledge here, okay? I think this is an example of, if this is to be true, again, I'm taking this at face value. This is an example of the quote-unquote right in this country playing to win now. And for a long time, they've been playing by a set of rules that the left has set, and the ethics and morals have been weaponized really against them because they're not rules of engagement that are followed by the left. I don't know if you've been keeping up with Democrats over the last years. I believe that the Democratic Party tweeted themselves when they wanted political advertisements to be regulated immediately because they felt that their opposition was spreading misinformation or disinformation. Okay? We know that they have been pro-cancellation. Really, that's where the whole thing stemmed from. They just felt justified in whoever they were taking off the air, whether it happened to Gina Carano, whether it happened to anybody that had their jobs basically stripped away from them, their gigs stripped away from them because they said something that they did not like. Now, what's happening now is that a lot of people have woke up, which is why people aren't going to be falling over themselves or each other trying to go to bat for Jimmy Kimmel, assuming that this is true, because Jimmy Kimmel himself has been on the record. There's a video even right here. I'll play real quick, at least the audio you'll hear.
Parting ways, which means he was fired. I mean, that's really what parting ways means.
So the crowd is cheering. This is when...
He couldn't be reached for comment. He's already on a plane to Moscow to meet with his manager.
This is talking about Tucker
What a
Carlson,
shock. I mean, what an absolutely delightful shock this is.
So, Jimmy Kimmel himself didn't have a problem with any of that sort of thing happening to people that he thought or believed were his adversaries. Most leftists don't, okay? So they're only playing this whole because it's advantageous to them. Like, wait a minute, I thought you guys were against cancel culture, blah, 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 blah. I've told you guys a million times, you're not playing by the same set of rules, and you only lose when you act as if you are. And that's what the left is taking advantage of. And that's, I think, a lot of people have come to that realization, and that's why people are acting the way that they are. Now, I'll be clear here. I'm going to be totally fair. I'm not fond of the FCC. I don't think it should exist. Some people have been looking to their laws or rules, regulations that are already intact, saying that they violated said rules, and that's why they're going after them, or basically saying that, hey, you handle this or we will type of situation. I believe that can be said about pretty much all regulations. If you look hard enough and find a lawyer, they will find something was in error, done in error, right? They can do that with just about anything. We are the most litigious country on the planet. All that being said, not fond of the FCC. So if I'm assuming that this is true, I think both things can be true, actually, that while it may not be from a strategic standpoint, really valuable, really advantageous of you to go to the defense of Jimmy Kimmel because he certainly wouldn't, and his side certainly wouldn't, and they've shown you that. That could be true. On the other hand, the FCC, if this is true, again, I'm doing a lot of assumptions here, that they kind of tried to strong arm ABC, Disney, I wouldn't be pro that at all. Now, Disney has had their, we know they've been, who they've been strong armed by as far as their ideology is concerned, and people that have been outed out of their company due to this simple fact. So you kind of look at it more like a karma situation, maybe. But I'm not fond of the FCC, and I'll be fair, going after anybody for that matter. I don't think the FCC should exist. That said, I wish that, especially the right in this country, I don't think they understand just how much power that they have. If you could just, with that energy, mobilize folks, you would change this culture overnight. Okay, maybe not overnight, but it would happen very quickly. I think a lot of the problems that happens as far as the general responses is that, and I've mentioned this in my previous videos this week, the right, and it just includes everybody they lump in that, on that side, whether it be libertarians, conservatives, classical liberals, all of the names, all of the terms, they often look for two things they do. They often look for political solutions, which is why they lose often. And on the other hand, they look to the institutions that have been established as the legitimate forms, especially in entertainment, as the righteous ones. And so instead of, this is why it's often so difficult for people that are not, or let's say to the right of Bernie Sanders, to build and have that right. It's so difficult for that to happen because oftentimes our side looks to them as the legitimate ones. And so we place a lot of stock. And this is why people are still of the opinion in this pipe dream that you could somehow change those institutions to be more moderate on issues or to not be infested with a bunch of commies. And I think you're out of your minds thinking that you can do that. And that's where I get more frustrated than anything, because I'm like, dude, you guys have a lot of power. You don't need the government. You don't need the FCC. You don't need any of that. If you could just focus for a little bit and start, building for that matter, instead of expecting them to change or acknowledge you, man, you would wield so much power. The power that the left has often is because they have the control rather of these institutions, but it's all about perceived legitimacy. You hear me say that all the time. We look to them and say, well, you are the legitimate ones, or you are in control of the legitimate products, IPs, concepts, like with education and stuff. You're in charge of all that. And so we just want you to change. And you find yourself often begging for them to embrace and accept you. And I think that is a losing effort, right? And this is, it's not to say that this is an example of it. More so what I'm saying is that if people mobilized the same in a similar fashion here, but just more so redirected in creating these new concepts, I think that hive mind is going to exist over there, but you can overpower them by replacing them. It wouldn't require the government at all, or very minimal, right? And maybe I'm tripping there. And that, man, when I see examples of this, I'm like, dude, if we just got focused enough, man, we could, this wouldn't even be a conversation that we would be having. They'd be laughed out of the market, and we go about our business. So, and that's all I'm asking people to do is focus. That's it.